You often meet people in the type community who are really activated by a desire to nail down their type once and for all. In fact, often by the desire to nail down the type of other people once and for all as well. And that's not so surprising because projection is a thing, isn't it? But I want in this brief video to make the case for the fact that type is not fixed, and that not only can it be shown that it is not fixed, but in fact the desire for type to be rigid and fixed and having limits, what I call the finite attitude, in opposition to the infinite attitude of the infinite soul, which is my new book on the INFJ. You can get it, as well as its prequel, The Infinite Soul, the Ecstatic Soul, which looks more at INFJ psychology. This is more about INFJ life in the modern world. What are the options for an INFJ in a hostile modern world to be happy in a rich, fruitful life? Of course, it involves making choices, and those choices are going to explode, if you like, those postulated limits that are supposed to be inherent to any particular type. But even prior to demonstrating that type itself is more like a family, with resemblances between its members, and then resemblances with other type families, like the family of INTJs or the family of ENFJs or what have you, there is a sense in which even the people that seem to be most adamant in their desire to have objective definitions of type, to have fixed, essentialistic carvings out of type, they're not really looking for that. They are also looking for something that explodes those limits that at a conscious level they think that they are, wanting to impose. The first reason why these people are not really activated by this ideal that they're supposed to possess is that if they really were activated by it, they wouldn't be interested in personality theory. They wouldn't really be interested in personality types. It's just well known that the most hard-nosed scientists among us humans don't really take a massive interest in typology, because typology is loose, typology is fuzzy, typology has sometimes vague boundaries. It's a bit of makeshift arrangement sometimes. It's linked to the everydayness of our lives. It's like life. Type is like life. Type blends into life, and life blends into type, which is one of the mottos of my book. Type is like life. So type and the meaning that we derive from our, appreciation of our type is something that is susceptible to evolution. It's not something that's fixed once and for all, and that's not what we want, because we're not looking for a straitjacket, and nobody's looking for a straitjacket. And the people who are really interested in abstract objects that don't change, categories that are established once and for all, that's what they're like, and they're not otherwise. These people do math, these people do physics, these people might do computer science perhaps. They're not going to be interested in typology. If you're interested in typology, even though you might desire to be as objective as possible in your discussions with other members of the type community, deep down, what activates you about the personality types is the soul, is the search for your inner self, and it's the journey of individuation, emancipation. So it's a Jungian journey which is full of notions like meaning and purpose and value, life choices, ethics, ethical decisions, aesthetics, all the things that don't fit into an objective scientific view of the world. That is what activates people's interest in type, not necessarily the surface level discourse that they have about type, which may be more or less hard-nosed, rigid, empirical, scientific. Really what activates them in their innermost core has to have to do with value, meaning, and purpose, because they're looking for some sort of compass, and that's what the conception of type helps them with. But like I said, type itself, regardless of what might activate the desires and hopes and interests of people, type itself is easily shown to be a fluid concept by itself. If you look at, for example, the INFJ, right, we're we don't live in the 16th century, or we don't live at the time of the apostles and Jesus Christ. So this is theoretical. Of course, typology didn't exist at the time, but it's reasonable to assume that there were INFJs at the time, and it's not such a leap to imagine that there could have been an articulation of what the INFJ type meant in the vocabulary of those eras, which we could understand. But certainly, INFJ would not mean the same thing back then that it means now. Because when we think of an INFJ personality now, or when we think of an ENTP personality now, when we think of an ISTP personality now, or an ISTJ personality now, we think of it as having certain specific traits. So for example, one of the ways in which we understand ourselves to be INFJs is that we're misunderstood, we're rare, and we're misconstrued, misperceived, and we don't fit well within mainstream society. That is part of the current definition of what it is to be an INFJ. It's very possible that in certain other epochs, and some as hypotheses that I've shared before, INFJs were much more valued. INFJs were much more inserted within society, in a society that is still enchanted, that still is animated by meanings, where not everything is about cause and effect and nothing else, is worth paying attention to in terms of truth conditions. In a society where profits are seen with fascination rather than with amusement and derision. INFJ wasn't something that meant being rare and misunderstood and an outcast. I mean, at least it's very possible that it meant other things. There were things in common with the meaning that it has today, hence this notion of a family. When we're members of a family, we have relatives. Maybe we have the same pair of eyes, maybe we have the same nose, maybe we have the same temperament. But what's going on is family resemblance, and there's always things that we don't have in common and are still part of the family INFJ or the family ENTP or the family ISTJ. And so once you explode this notion of the static, rigid conception of type, and you embrace something that's more fluid, something that's infinite, something that could have infinite descriptions, is part of the reason why I call my book The Infinite Soul, it's much more liberating. It's more liberating. It's closer to the truth, I strongly believe, about type. And it's primarily much more aligned with our innermost motivations. Nobody who's interested, let me reiterate this, nobody who's interested in personality type, personality theory, is interested from purely disengaged, detached, aloof, and scientific reasons. They are animated by a search for value, meaning, motivation, and inspiration. Otherwise, they wouldn't be interested in personality types. Okay? So if you enjoyed this video, give me a like. If you'd be so kind, don't forget that you can review The Infinite Soul if you haven't yet. It really helps with the referencing, so I appreciate you. Otherwise, you can get the book, INFJ Life in the Modern World. That's the new book. The sequel, The Ecstatic Soul, which looks more at the INFJ consciousness and what it means existentially for INFJs. Analysis of alienation, world belonging or world rejection, disembodiment, and so on. And it's well reviewed. Check it out. Now, I also have a Patreon page, and recently I've been getting new patrons. Thank you so much. It keeps my channel going. There's a link below if you would like to support my work, interact with me. It's on Patreon. Thank you, and talk to you next time. Bye-bye.